And so he came to understand it was not defeat, but the fear of losing to which he first succumbed. So, this is Azuma, the deuteragonist of Choujin X and the best friend of Tokyo. If you look close enough, you'll notice that he resembles Kaneki Ken physically, even sporting the trademark white hair. But after the time skip, he might as well be Kaneki's child. That's how much they represent each other. I mean, this could be intentional, as Kaneki and Azuma seem to have a similar foundation for their fighting styles, and Azuma has Kaneki's old habit of just hopping into a berserk state whenever he's getting his ass beat. So, I decided to make this video on him because I find him very interesting as a character. You can see throughout the series that he defines himself and his value through combat and winning. Mostly winning. It's a very interesting topic because it can make him such a detestable person, but the best moments in the series come from this mentality and studying it. I mean, I'm not comparing Azuma to these characters, but it's also why characters like Natsuki Subaru or Katsuki Bakugo were so interesting. Like with Subaru, for example, you never knew that Subaru was a born winner and someone who's always been the best at everything he did until later on in the show. But when you look back at his character and everything he did up until you found out, you're like, holy shit, this all makes sense now. I will always stand by the fact that the winner that falls from grace is always a very interesting character archetype. And I mean, even after the time skip, Azuma is still like this. You can see that Azuma prioritized defeating Zora's lackeys rather than saving the civilians on the plane. Of course, none of this is to say that Azuma is a quote-unquote bad person, but it's just more so pointing out what he prefers to do and what he prefers to call an accomplishment. Anybody in the world can point out that Azuma's pride and wrath is as reckless as ever and it endangers those around them. But he's been actively working to solve it, and it does show. I mean, even after the time skip, you can see that he's much more level-headed and tactical when fighting somebody as intelligent as Jing was. Sure, the plane part is questionable, but it doesn't deter the fact that Azuma's always gone out of his way to protect those in need, ever since he was a kid. He would even spend his own free time after school protecting civilians from just random thugs. Another thing about Azuma that I really like and relates to the last point is the reasoning behind his actions are kind of questionable. Not questionable in the way that, oh, he's doing this for a bad reason, but it's more so why did he do these things that he's done. Like, you can ask, did he rush into Umezawa before awakening his abilities because he wanted to continue to play the role of Tokyo's hero? Or did he actually want to save his friend? Or did he just want to test his strength? The great thing about this dude's character is that you can say it's all three. You never really know, although I do lean towards him being Tokyo's hero, like that's his reason because of their fight after. But any reason it wouldn't be unreasonable for you to say any of these answers. And this is Sui Ishida's magic at work, right? All characters are always nuanced or just batshit insane. And Azuma's battle with Yubiko is one of my favorites in the series. It displays everything that makes Azuma such a compelling character. His immense strength, his battle intelligence, his fatal flaws, especially that burst of emotion that always comes out when he's overwhelmed. I don't know if it's just me, but it really reminds me of the original Tokyo Ghoul, and I think that's why I enjoy the fight so much. Let's really sit down and talk about it. From his first Choujin awakening to his fight with Yubiko to the fight with Jing, Azuma has displayed this crazy talent for battle. And it's quite obvious that he holds a certain amount of pride within himself for having this, right? And he always gets frustrated when he's getting whooped because this is the first time he's getting whooped in his life, right? He's been growing up just winning and crushing everybody that stood in the way of him in Tokyo. And now it's like, has he won a fight since he turned into a Choujin? And I mean, you can't say that he's won the fights that we've seen, but after he won, he got his ass whooped right away or took it out. Bro's been getting humbled left and right, and you can see that it's really pissing him off. Especially after seeing the person that he's always supposed to protect, Tokyo, become one of the strongest people, the hero of Iwato, and become this prophetic savior who's supposed to defeat this impending dark calamity, right? And you can see that during the time skip in chapter 35, Tokyo leaving him behind extremely frustrated him. One could really say that Azuma's feelings about Tokyo, and maybe they'll have a rematch in the future, that's not unreasonable. His feelings toward Tokyo are most likely the same as they've been before. Anyway, to talk about Azuma's powers and Choujin ability, it's difficult to pinpoint what exactly he is, and it's always been difficult because he can do everything. I mean, bro is creating blades, armor, chains, to manipulating the cloth that's on his head. He's talking to hyenas. What one thing can do all of that? So I've never really tried to go ahead and guess. We can say that he's a beast Choujin that's also the war Choujin. I think he's the war Choujin because we've heard talk about the war Choujin, and it's been confirmed that Queen was only called the war Choujin because they didn't know what he was, but he's not the war Choujin. But that doesn't explain the hyena talk, right? So anybody's guess is as good as mine. In terms of him being the X, I once talked about how all Choujin are children of God in my last video about Choujin X, wink wink, with Choujin X resembling a Jesus-like being. And to come back to this, right, since we're talking about Azuma, Azuma's birthday is on 12/25, the birth of Christ. So to me, it all makes sense. I do think that Azuma could be the war Choujin. And there's also Yubiko talking about Azuma's combat philosophy, stating that people like Azuma are the people who know how to fight, right? Like, they've gone through the experience of battle, so they know what true battle is. There's just so many hints in the story that point towards Azuma becoming something akin to a combat god. You know what I mean? Like the Tokita Oma of Choujin X. And in terms of his true combat ability, like his raw stats, he's easily one of the most talented. He was able to fight Ririka Umezawa in a human form. He wasn't even a Choujin yet. You gotta remember, Ririka stomped both Tokyo and Ellie at the same time with no problem. Azuma performed better against her. Azuma's been fighting Choujin and fighting like one since even before he became a Choujin in the first place. You gotta remember, in the first chapter, Azuma was literally able to shatter Johnny's arms, both of his arms at the same time with a single kick. Even his best friend Tokyo believed that the way Azuma dealt with Johnny was too brutal. With Azuma's two defining traits being both combat and winning, I see no other reason than to believe that he's the war Choujin. His abilities being weapons of war, defenses of war. There's just so much evidence to support that Azuma will be the war Choujin. I'm sorry to say this over and over again, but this is what every single thing in his character is leading up to. As established in that first quote, Azuma's biggest fear is losing, and he defines most of his victory through combat. And whenever Azuma's backed into a corner where he's certain he will lose, he always goes into a chaos state, laser focused on his victory in battle. All in all, I've come to like Azuma as a character, and I'm talking about more of his philosophy rather than his powers or personality, because Ishida Sui seems to study his own characters, especially Azuma, through his battle choices, the way he acts in battle, and the way he just carries himself. Every single moment that defines Azuma is in one of these three categories. So I hope to see more of that from him. I hope to see him have more clashes with Tokyo, because Azuma seems to fight to prove a point in his victory and all that, right? Everything I just went over, whereas Tokyo only really fights if he's pushed to protect somebody. And I think that difference between them two will eventually result in some sort of clash of philosophies or an argument or something like that. And honestly, we all know a Tokyo and Azuma rematch will go hard, so I want that. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap this up here. If you took the time to watch this video, thank you so much. Consider leaving a like and subscribing. I'll see you guys in the next one.